I'm not sure if this technically counts for the theme since my dad wasn't alone. My mom and I were asleep for this though, and neither of us even knew it happened until he told us years later. Effectively, this means he was by himself in this situation. I've been itching to tell this story anyway, so here goes. This is more my dad's story than mine, obviously. I was really little at the time, and I don't really remember where we even were. My dad was driving us home from some trip one night, with my mom and I asleep in the back seat as previously mentioned. We lived in Hemet, this kinda dinky town in Southern California at the time. We had to take what I'm pretty sure was Route 74 to get back there from wherever we were. Back then, pretty much nothing had been built out there yet, probably the mid to late 90s or so. It was just this big, long, lonely stretch of nothing out in the middle of the desert. It was around 1 a.m. or something like that, so obviously there weren't that many people out there, and my dad, being the only one awake, was already pretty on edge. Just up ahead, he noticed an intersection, and the lights began to change. He didn't see any cars coming at all, and it was just flat nighttime desert. You'd definitely see them if they were. For some reason though, his hair began to stand on edge, as he puts it. Sure enough, as he looked a little bit closer, he could see someone walking out into the middle of the road. Already, he didn't like this one bit, but maybe they were just lost or some shit, right? Out of his peripheral vision though, he noticed other people hiding in the bushes on the side of the road. He pretty quickly realized these people were trying to surround his car. Some things about my dad. He's a mechanic, so he tends to acquire a lot of cars, and we had a lot of different ones through the years we lived there. He'd also been through a ton of shit. Alcoholism, drug abuse, a load of motorcycle accidents. He's got crushed discs in his neck and lower back, but somehow he's still an extremely sharp guy. The car we had was a Lincoln Town Car, so a good 400-pound beast of a car. My dad knew nothing good could come from what was happening. He always liked to tell me that if you're in your car, that's the best weapon you can have. He just floored it. He hit the dude that had walked in front of the car. The dude went tumbling over the hood, and my dad just kept on driving. The next day at work, he started to think about it, and obviously he felt kind of bad. Maybe their car had just broken down or something, and they were in the bushes for privacy. He didn't really know. He decided to mention it to a sheriff just in case. Maybe he knew someone who got hurt and didn't deserve it. Instead, the sheriff flipped out about it and started calling everyone looking for people who went to hospitals in the area with those injuries. It turned out there'd been a nasty string of carjackings in the area, usually ending with the people in said cars being killed. My dad mentioned cars being found in the desert, burnt up with the people inside them still. I don't know if there's ever been any news on it or anything, so I can't really confirm that. Basically, the sheriff told my dad he did the right thing. Hemet was kind of a retirement town at the time, and Lincolns are kind of seen as old folks' cars, so there's a good chance these people thought my dad was some random old nice person, not a grizzled mechanic with his family sleeping in the back seat. Pretty chilling to think about what might have happened if my dad was the type to have stopped for them. Driving from North Carolina to Northern Virginia at night alone, typically about a 3-hour drive, some terrifying shit can happen. This is 100% real, and I'll never forget that moment. I was a 22-year-old man at the time of this story 4 years ago. About halfway through, I needed to stop off at a rest station to very quickly take a piss. I remember wanting to be super fast so I could meet my friends on time in Virginia. I pulled into a spot and I saw another car pull in right next to mine. I remember thinking that they were parking pretty aggressively, but I didn't really look much more or think anything beyond that. Instead, I went to piss. As I was leaving the bathroom, I saw this guy meander in and lock eyes with me in the fucking weirdest way I'd ever seen in my life. He had this black and white checkered shirt like a chessboard and neon green long pants. Quite a memorable outfit to say the least. As I passed him by, I expected him to go to the bathroom, but after maybe 5 seconds, he came out immediately walking after me. He hopped into his car, which of course was the one aggressively parked right next to mine. I was weirded out at this point, but surely now this would be all over. No. I drove for another 30 minutes, only to notice that a car had pulled up in the lane next to me and was driving at the exact same speed. I rolled down my window trying to see if this car was trying to tell me something. Maybe I had a taillight out or something. Keep in mind, I'd already long forgotten about that creep from before. Well, fuck me when I realized it was him, and he was not looking at the road at all. He was staring unblinkingly at me. He kept on making these faces, like he was gagging and smiling. He smiled like the Joker and kept licking his lips. It was terrifying. At this point, I flipped him off and sped up. This was also the exact instant when I saw his car lights behind me and realized that one of the headlights was out. In a startling moment, I realized that this same car had been behind me since I left North Carolina almost 3 hours ago. The man had been following me the entire time. With no clue what to do here, I couldn't pull over and I couldn't just drive like a lunatic either. In hindsight, maybe I should have called the cops. At the time, I didn't really know what to do though. I just sped up and tried to get him out of my line of sight. Eventually, I did manage to lose him a bit, only for him to come flying down the road 10 minutes later in front of me and turn his blinker on for the next exit. He slowed down, so I'd either have to take the exit too, or he'd try and force me off the road. I put my blinker on and waited for his car to approach mine. Then I floored it, and I mean really floored it, close to 120 miles per hour. The man tried to move into my car only to shoot past and into the exit, and I never saw him again. It still haunts me that he was following me that entire time. If I hadn't been so quick in the bathroom, I wonder what would have happened to me. I was driving near Santa Monica College one day. It was a nice and sunny day with lots of people out on the street, hanging out, enjoying the weather. I was quite tired and more than a little distracted. I was stopped at a red light waiting for it to change when my passenger door suddenly opened. A man got right into my car. I froze. This guy was in his late 20s or early 30s, tall and very strong looking, wearing jeans and a hoodie covering his face. He had a very angry look on his face. "Drive," he said. I'm a woman, and at the time I was 19. I was not exactly the biggest fighter. I was terrified. Every serial killer article I'd ever read flashed through my mind, and I tried to think of what I could use as a weapon, but there was nothing around me. All I could do was what he said. I didn't even get the chance to speak much. He had me drive him around Los Angeles for about 2 hours. Occasionally, he'd have me pull over to the side of the road and then just rant angrily to me about how fucked up his life was. All women are cunts and should be killed immediately. That was his main theme. Women suck and don't deserve to live. During those ragey monologues, he'd slam his fists into everything, kick the dashboard, and just go absolutely insane. I did what I think any person would do who's physically outmatched and trapped near an angry, crazy asshole. I acted submissive and unthreatening. I agreed with everything he said, so he wouldn't try to hurt me. Eventually, he wound down and gave me the great compliment of saying I might be one of the few women who didn't deserve to be raped or killed. Then, just as soon as he'd come, at a random intersection, he had me stop. He jumped out of the car and ran away and disappeared. I was physically fucked up for days afterward. The adrenaline and the terror it kicked up was so strong, it felt like it actually crashed my brain. I had the freakiest walk home one night. So you get the picture, I grew up out in the country, smack dab in the middle of nowhere. Former farming community, but was mostly just people who wanted a bit of land at this point in time. When I was in my later teens, I would frequently walk home from a friend's house in the middle of the night. I never really thought much of it. It was a 2-mile walk in the middle of the night with nothing but the moon to light your way home. I was actually out with someone one night when they got a call saying someone had died or gotten sick or something or other. This person also happened to be my ride. They were supposed to be driving me home, but because of this emergency, he asked if he could drop me off from approximately where I'd usually walk from anyway. I said sure, even though it was slightly further and I wouldn't be going my usual route. Whatever, he had an emergency, so it was fine. I get out, my friend takes off, and I start walking. No more than 2 minutes into my walk though, I hear rustling in the bushes, and something starts running towards me from the road. Another animal hops out of the bushes, doing the exact same. 2 massive guard dogs, trained Dobermans. I instantly remembered why I never took this route. It was due to the fact that the people who owned this corner lot were extremely private. Gates and fences surrounding the property all over, with a massive home right in the center. Numerous rumors of nefarious activities surrounded this area. Anyway, I started running as fast as I could. I thought to myself, you fucking idiot, they're gonna catch you in no time. Instantly, I turned around. I made myself as big as possible and let out as loud a roar as I could. I ran straight towards these dogs. Surprisingly, they took right off into the forest and presumably back home. I continued on my walk thinking that would be it. All was fine and dandy until I turned the corner, about 20 minutes from my home still. As soon as I turned this corner at the intersection, I could hear some voices outside. It was around 2 a.m. at this point, so this was fairly unusual for this area. I proceeded with caution and silence as I was growing closer and closer to these 2 voices. Suddenly I could make out what they were doing. They were digging a fucking hole at 2 a.m. in the dark and freezing cold. I saw one of the men snap to attention. "Hey, what was that?" The digging stopped right away. I was 40 meters away from where they were digging. I did what any semi-rational person would do. I hid. I crept into the bushes and hid in the ditch for a good half hour. The men searched for a while before they gave up. I worked up the courage to sneak further into the forest and around so I could get the fuck out of there and into my bed. They returned to digging and talking the entire time. They didn't once mention what they were digging for, but I wouldn't either if I was digging a hole in the middle of nowhere to hide something. I got home and went right to sleep. It didn't sit right with me though, so I drove by slowly the next day during daylight to check it out. There was a hole that was freshly dug and filled in, right in the middle of the driveway. I kept my mouth shut about this for a long time. I didn't even tell my parents about it until a little over a year ago, when they were moving away from that area. Their response was to tell me about all the murders that had occurred previously on that street. My dad laughed and said, "Sounds like they added another one." Huh, good times, I guess. My dad is a very logical person, and I'd like to think I'd take after him myself. A lot of nighttime terrors I got through by calmly trying to understand what was going on and figuring out what was happening systematically. Those are branches from a tree outside my window, not hands tapping on the wall, etc. Our house was quite old and much of the support structure was made of wood, so I'd become quite accustomed to the occasional creak at night. Our house was also right next to a bend in the road, just along a speed bump. Often, this meant the car lights would shine in through the windows. Heavier vehicles passing on the road would even gently shake the house and cause some small creaks as well. For a lot of my childhood, I didn't have a door on my room. Not even a wall really, since my room was defined by 3 walls and a closet serving as the 4th one. This meant that at night, I would often look out into the hallway of the house while trying to fall asleep. Every car that passed the bend in the road would trace their headlights across the hallway, accompanied with some minor squeaks and cracks from the road. When I was smaller, I used to get very scared of this. My dad got tired of me crying though, so he laid in bed for about 10 minutes with me to see what I was so scared of, then proceeded to systematically explain to me what was happening. Once I actually knew what was going on, I started being a lot less scared. One night, I saw some more lights, but these ones were moving a bit differently. Instead of coming out through the windows, it looked like they were coming from up the stairs. I saw a figure and a shaped cone of light slowly going down the stairs and moving down the hallway. At first, I thought it must be a very slow car illuminating someone out on a walk or something, but the lights normally stopped a meter or so from my door, and that's as far as the windows would allow them to go. The figure continued to move down though, until now I could actually see it was a person standing with one foot barely inside my room. It was a woman. She placed her hand on the wall. I could now see the woman standing there incredibly clearly. She was wearing some sort of dress and covered with a see-through drape kind of thing. It kind of almost reminded me of a wedding dress or something. I was stunned, staring at her as she stared in at me. I don't know for how long we were like this. It seemed she was just staring at me with her head tilted for almost an hour. Knowing the state I was in though, it must have likely been about 10 seconds or so. Just as suddenly as she'd come down the stairs, she turned around and sprinted down the hallway. For some reason, I just calmed right down immediately. Unnaturally, almost like shock, I felt as calm and relaxed as ever. I fell asleep and woke up sometime later because my parents finally came home. I wanted to say something about it in the morning. I came downstairs to my parents yelling at my sister because she'd snuck out while she was supposed to be watching me. It turns out she'd left me home alone that entire night, so I have no idea who that woman was. When I was about 16 or so, I tried to get a good night's rest before a very important sectional track meet the next day. I was tossing and turning all night. Competition nerves and the heat radiating throughout the bedroom were keeping me wide awake. The windows were closed and the fan was turned off. All I could hear was the wind faintly slapping against the window from time to time. My door would typically be closed to eliminate the sounds that cornfield wildlife produced at night. At the time, my queen-sized bed was perfectly centered across the room from my 2 swivel door closet. On the right side of the closet door hung some deer antlers that I'd found searching the cornfield mentioned before. It was probably around 2 a.m. at this time. The whole house remained silent, with complete darkness. Not a single ambient sound to be heard. As I was just staring up at the ceiling and walls, trying to follow its framing around the room to fall asleep, I heard a subtle, faint scratching noise appear from my closet. My eyes shot directly to it, as my perception became slowly accustomed to the darkness in the room. I stared and started to sweat, concerned and trying to wrap my mind around what could have caused that sound. Again, a subtle scratching noise, almost inaudible. Likely due to the silence of the night, it caused me to really focus on anything that stimulated my hearing. I could not look away from the direction this scratching was coming from. I didn't see any changes in the closet door though as the scratching continued. About 15 seconds went by of just staring at this unchanging closet door. I was staring, holding my breath in terror, trying to decide what to do, when those scratches became bangs. Now I could visually see the door moving in and out of its framework, and I heard the rattling of the deer antlers clasping together on the wall. Whatever was inside my closet was banging on the door hard now. The bangs continued, and it felt like an eternity. I jumped 5 feet from my bed to the bedroom door to turn the doorknob and escape that terror. I sprinted down the hallway panicking. I managed to clear all 10 steps that led to the main floor of my house in a single leap. I ran to get help, but when I returned, the noises had stopped. To this day, I have no idea what the sound was or what could have produced it. I checked the closet, but afterward I didn't find anything. I tell my friends this story sometimes, and they have no logical answers either. It remains a mystery I'll probably never solve in my entire life. What is up guys, Blue Spooky here as always. It's been a while since my last outro, so I figured I'd do one again. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. If you liked the video, please be sure to like, share, comment, or subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you have any constructive criticism you'd like to share with me, be sure to leave it in the comments below. Although I can't respond to every comment I get nowadays anymore, I still do read all of them, and I enjoy hearing your guys' thoughts and opinions, especially of your opinions on the stories in the videos. If you guys have some stories you'd like to share yourselves, please be sure to check in the description below the video. There will be links to all of my social media, including my Facebook, Gmail, and Twitter accounts. Be sure to send me a message on any of those, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include in the tagline what the name of the story is if it has one, what type of story it is if it has a type, and how you'd like to be credited in the description of the video the story appears in. Also, please be sure to properly format and add as much detail as you feel comfortable with to ensure the most probability your story makes it into a video. I think that's pretty much it for now, though. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day.